What's up, guys? Welcome to the very first episode of NintendFriends. Today we are going to be talking about how we were introduced into Nintendo, where we are with Nintendo now, as well as our favorite Nintendo console. I am your host, DA, and this is my co-host, Abel.
How's it going?
It's going good, man. I was really excited for this podcast.
Yeah, no, me too.
I've been wanting to start like a gaming podcast. I couldn't figure out a name, and I finally looked online, like, is this taken? I just went through like trial and error, and I finally landed on NintendFriends. It rhymes, it sounds good, it sounds really put together, so yeah. I just went with it. And then like when I texted you, like, I know you kind of liked it too, so
yeah.
But it looks good. And then like my cousin, she did our logo and everything, and I put up the trailer, and like it just worked really well. So like,
shout out to Alyssa
Morales, right? But thank you for that. But we're here now, and we've been talking about it for like a few days, and like I've just been excited for this whole week. Mm-hmm. But to get straight to it, just gonna a little bit about me. About me, DA. I have been a gamer kind of all my life. I used to play Nintendo back in the day. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I had my own console and stuff like that. I finally got a PS2 at the age of like 10 or 12, and then did the PS2, went away with it for about 10 years, and then got a PS4, got a Switch, got everything that's out now. So, but yeah, that's as far as like me. I like to game with my friends on, every other day, stuff like that. So what about you? Like, what is like gaming as far as like as a whole, like in your life right now?
Well, definitely when I started, it was like, man, as far back as I can remember, pretty much, like, but it's all been mainly Nintendo for me. But nice. Yeah, that's been like the core of all my gaming experience throughout like my childhood, my teenage years, everything. What was interesting though was that my family never bought any Nintendo consoles, hardly ever.
Really?
Yeah, all my Nintendo consoles, all my everything really that had to do anything with gaming was mainly hand-me-down stuff from my cousin, who is also like a huge gamer, because he was older than us. Mm-hmm. So he always got the brand new console whenever it came out, and he would always give us the old stuff. So he got the GameCube, he gave us the N64. He got the Wii, he gave us the GameCube, We were always...
So I guess you're already going into like the first segment, which is like how we were introduced into Nintendo. So you said that it was kind of like a hand-me-down thing, like your cousin would give you stuff like that.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it started. And all the stuff like, cause he is like a hardcore gamer, and he would buy as many games as he possibly could, get as many games as he could. Right. So when he was done using those consoles, all those games would go to us, which were a lot. And so I was exposed to like a lot of gaming in my childhood, and I don't know, I love doing it. So
right.
Yeah.
I feel like I had the same type of experience. Mm-hmm. So like my older cousin. The same thing. I think it's just like, I don't know if it's like a Latino thing or it's just like, because
you don't want to throw anything away. You just want to give it to another
So
member
like,
of the family.
yeah, exactly. So like my cousin would, my first console. What was your first console, by the way?
The first one that I can remember was, I'll say the oldest one.
Okay.
The oldest one that we had was a Sega Genesis.
Okay. See, like, my oldest one was my first Nintendo console, or even, like, console in general. The way that I got started is the NES.
Oh, yeah.
So, like,
Very.
You pop it out, you blow on it, you put it back in, you push it down. It's like performing CPR, on the thing. But, like, that's where I got introduced into Nintendo. The very first game I played, I think a lot of people's first time with Nintendo was Super Mario Bros. Mm-hmm. And... that's like that. In my head, that's just the greatest game of all time. In my head, like in my mind,
right?
To my opinion, that is the best game of all time. Everybody knows it. Everybody has probably played it in their lifetime. Like, how can you not dub that like at least one of the greatest games of all time?
Especially for the time too. I mean, it was like just super innovative, super. I mean.
It was like 1985.
1985. It was nothing but arcade games. They didn't have anything that you could bring home, It's like the fact that you could do these multiple worlds without having to pay for anything in the comfort of your own home. and it's very engaging, you know, like with a super memorable mascot. It's just like there's little to no flaws within the game, you know.
I would agree.
Save for like, you know, maybe the hardware glitches, but you know, it's a product of the time, you know. But I mean, for the time, I mean, it's a near perfect game, you know, if not perfect.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. You're talking about it's the game of a generation, but also like I can't even imagine where we would be as far as like platforming, but even gaming in general, like where it would be without Super Mario Bros. Like the game design of that is just, it's so good and it holds up so well. Like,
I mean, it's still being done today.
That's what I'm saying. It's still being done today. You still see it. You see its influence in games of today, and then and even like the Mario games now. Like you see that in what we play now, and it's still being done. You talk about like the new Super Mario Bros. For Switch, like it's the same game.
Yeah.
But like people love it so much, and how many times has it been done? And it like there are some times where it's gotten old, I think. Like with, you know, New Super Mario's 2, I believe, on the 3DS. Like but it's not even a bad game. It's like the worst of those games, but like it's still so good.
Yeah.
And like the only bad thing you have to say about it is that like the levels get a little stale. But the thing is, like, people are still playing it. Nintendo puts these things out and they still make a ton of money because people just will continue to come and buy these games, and just the fact that it gets people to come back. Like, it's just...
Yeah. It
blows my mind.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like... I think, for me, personally, I will say, like, I wasn't exposed to, you know, classic NES, things like that, you know. The first games that I was exposed to, you know, wasn't Super Mario, you know, but... As somebody who's grown up with other games and growing into Nintendo well past NES days and even SNES days, I still get it, you know?
Yeah.
And the people who are like half our age, you know, like 10, 13 years old, you know, they're still playing the new games that are coming out. And obviously they don't, you know, they weren't around when those old games were coming out, but even they get it, you know, they understand how good they are now because of how good they were back then, you know? So it's just... I
saw this video, you know, those like the Fine Brother videos where like people react?
Yeah.
So they had kids like nowadays, they're like 10 years old, 10 to like maybe teenagers, who didn't grow up with like Super Mario Bros. like we did. But the thing is, I know they played it at least once, whether it be like an emulator or whatever, but they had them play it on like the actual NES, and they got them reacting to it, and they're like, oh, like it's Mario, and like, you know, man, like this was like in arcades back then, like it was like, no, it was in our homes. But the thing is, like, they're playing it and they're having just as much fun, like playing that. But man, but that's so that. What about you as far as like your start with Nintendo? What was your first a Nintendo console, but also your very first game, like Nintendo game? Was it also Super Mario Bros?
No. For me, yeah. No.
Straight up.
That game's terrible. No, I'm just kidding. No, for me, the first Nintendo console that I could think back to us playing all the time when I was a kid with my sisters was the N64. Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's such a good one.
N64, we had a lot of games on there. A lot of the classics too. Star Fox 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, like everything that you could possibly think of when you think classic Nintendo 64 games. We had it. Mario Kart, you know.
I'm jealous.
64, yeah.
I didn't have one of those.
I owe that to my cousin. But yeah, that's what I was exposed to first. As for like my first, I will say, as for like, because that was always like, oh, I'll play with my sisters, you know, we'll play Mario Kart together.
Yeah.
We'll do the adventures on Ocarina of Time together and stuff like that. But I will say the first Nintendo game that I really can say was like, this was my own. This was my own game. This was my own adventure. This was my own everything. Everything
where
was
you just got like, you just
immersed,
dove into immersed
on
into
my
it.
own. You know, not with other people, you know, or anything like that. It was
I think I can guess what it is, but I want you to say it. Go ahead.
Okay,
And say it.
it's it was Pokemon Ruby.
Oh, I
Game
was
Boy
actually
Advance.
wrong.
Pokemon Ruby. Game
Knowing
Boy
you,
Advance.
because I know you're a Zelda guy, so
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I kind of, but really, Pokemon Ruby.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with all the N64 games is the N64 was because it was a home console, you know, and we would play it on the TV, you know, the old box TVs, the big ones.
Right.
You'd have to plug in the wires and
Those
everything.
CRT.
Yeah.
TVs, yeah.
I was always playing that with my sisters, but when I got a Game Boy Advance, I had it all to myself.
By the
I
way,
would
the Game
play-
Boy Advance is our logo.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And I
So-
was like super excited to see that. I was like, oh, that's like
Yeah.
my favorite handheld console. It's super nostalgic. The design, the little intro, you know, that you play or that starts up every game. Like, it's just, oh, I love it.
Right.
But for me, definitely the one that like really I got immersed into on my own in my own time. I beat the game. I did everything. You know, I found all the Pokemon. I did everything.
Sheesh.
You know, that was definitely for me like the most like
The Ruby.
yeah, Pokemon Ruby, which was
So who was your
third
starter?
generation.
Who's your starter Pokemon in that one?
It was Torchic.
Torchic.
Yeah.
Is that is that still your go-to if you were to
Oh,
play
yeah.
that now? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I love Trico and I love Mudkip too, but like Torchic for me was the coolest one because I saw Blaziken and I was just like, oh,
yeah.
this one's
Yeah,
so
I
cool.
bet you, yeah. That's cool, man.
Plus, I'm a bit of a fire type kind of guy in terms of the starters, anyways. But
I'm the opposite. I'm
water.
water. But we'll get to that on a Pokemon show.
Yeah, we'll get to that on Pokemon show. But as
that's
for my
great.
first like immersive experience, it was definitely Pokemon Ruby. I just sunk so many hours into that game, leveled up all my Pokemon. Like I loved all my Pokemon. You know, I was just like, and as a kid too, like it's weird. You think of them as like. I don't even want to say pets. You think of them as like friends almost.
Yeah.
You know, you're a
No,
kid.
no, I get that.
You know, and you use your imagination. You're actually there, paddling, growing with them. You know, like it was so fun and immersive for me. And I'll say that's probably the most, as a child, anyways. That was the most immersive experience that I had with a Nintendo game, and it really was. You know.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
So the second thing we're going to talk about is where we are with Nintendo now. So we talked about where we started. Where are we at now? So obviously, I think it's pretty safe to say that we're both Switch owners.
Yeah.
But we do not have the same type of Switch. So
No, we do not.
So we're gonna go ahead and talk about this. So as far as where I am now with Nintendo, so a couple of years ago, I believe it was 2018. It just seems like so far now because we're already in 2021.
Yeah.
But 2018, there's this. I was watching YouTube. I've been a PlayStation guy since 2002.
Right.
Okay, so I had a PS2 and everything, and then I got a PS4 in 2015. You know, I've been PlayStation, right? It's been a while since I got it. You know, anything Nintendo, right? But there was this YouTuber that I just saw. It came up on my YouTube page one time. His name is Beat 'em Ups. Have you ever heard of him?
I think you told me.
I probably
about it.
showed you
Yeah.
right before. Well, he has like he was just talking up the Switch like so much, and I was just watching his videos, and I'm like, man, this guy makes a lot of sense when he's talking about like a Switch.
Yeah.
And like I had seen the Switch firsthand. I at one of the jobs I had, you know, some guy at my job brought it for lunch, and we played Mario Kart. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's pretty nifty, but it really didn't interest me. But the way that Beat 'em Ups, look him up by the way, great content. Beat 'em Ups was talking about the Switch and what it can do and how like the games for it. And he was just so passionate about it. It got me hyped for like the Switch, and I was like, man, this seems like a good idea. And I finally bought one for myself in 2019. And
Oh, really? That's when you got it?
Yeah, I had early 2019 in April.
Oh, so like, wow. That's like right before I met you.
Yeah. So I never looked back.
Yeah.
And I've just been... It made me love Nintendo so much. I went back and I bought a 2DS. I bought a 2DS XL.
Yeah.
You know, but like I had been like a
Make
game...
up for lost time.
Yeah, dude, like I was so excited. I started looking up game. I played Ocarina of Time again, you know. I played
the 3DS?
Yeah, on the 3DS. And also like on an emulator, but we'll cut that out because I don't want Nintendo to come for me. But like, you know, I played, you know, I bought it, okay? I bought it.
Yeah.
I bought Ocarina of Time. I bought Majora's Mask. You know, I gave you Majora's Mask.
Yeah,
you know?
he
So,
yeah.
but then I started going back and like just saying all this, playing all these games. Shut up! I know you're laughing at me, but I just started playing all these things, right? And I just fell in love with Nintendo again. It was so awesome because it brought me back to when I was a kid, and that's what I had missed out on. That's what Nintendo has just made me so like giggy inside, and like that PlayStation.
It's that childhood.
Yeah, that PlayStation and Xbox, like they just can't do. Yeah. Like they just can't. Like they're awesome games. The graphics are amazing, and like they're new gen consoles. And, the PS5 looks awesome. The Xbox, what is it? Series X looks great, but like Nintendo has been the highest, has had the highest numbers fiscally, right? For the last 2 years, and it's not really hard to see why. Yeah. Because they know how to market their stuff for the most part. Yeah. They know what kind of games.
The Wii U was a little.
But they learn. They learn from their mistakes. Yeah. The Switch has been really the best selling anything in gaming for the last 2 years, and like, so I bought a Switch, and like I said, I've never looked back, but I love that thing, man. If I had a choice between my PS4 and my Switch, I know my PS4 can play like movies, but I got a DVD player, so and I can just buy another PS4. But like, somebody's like, you gotta choose, like, gun to my head, you gotta choose one or the other. I would like, okay, take my PS4. Like, I need my Switch, I can't. So, but
there's just something about it.
Yeah, man, just something about the fact that you can play it handheld and on the go. But at least that's for me. Like, we're in a pandemic, so like we can't really like go on the go too much. But the places that we do go, it's really nice. Yeah. To to take with you. But just the fact, just the comfort in knowing, I can play Smash Bros.
Whenever
or like
and wherever.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if I want to go in the car, like on a ride or something, I can take it with me, and it's gonna be dope. So.
Especially while you're driving.
Oh yeah.
No, but like.
But what about you? Like, where are you at now?
Right. Well, I will say this. I am new to the relatively new. It's been about 6 months that I've had a Switch, something like that.
6 months.
Yeah, about half a year. Yeah, it's been about 6 months since I've had a Switch. But like he said at the beginning of the segment, I have a different Switch than him. I have the Switch Lite, which was very graciously given to me by my girlfriend. So I owe her.
She won Girlfriend of the Year last year.
Literally.
For giving you that Switch.
I know. I was like, what? Because she didn't tell me. So yeah, Girlfriend of the Year. But yeah, no. And she also got me Animal Crossing, which was for a good while the only Switch game I had. But nevertheless, when I got into the Switch and I really got to like, just dive deep, in the gameplay and things like that, I love it. I've always wanted one. I've always seen people, my friends, family members. I've always seen them playing them. I've never seen anyone with a Switch Lite. So I didn't know how that was gonna work, because I played the Switch many times.
Right.
But up to that point, I had never actually held a Switch Lite before. And I was like, well, we'll see how this is. And I really, really like it. And it surprised me, but it also didn't surprise me, because it surprised me because I was like, just because I had never experienced that console before. But it didn't surprise me because it was Nintendo.
Right.
So, like
they got a reputation.
Yeah, they got a reputation. They just put out great consoles, and even if some can make arguments for certain consoles, like GameCube or the Wii U or anything like that.
It's funny because the Wii U was pretty laughable when it came out, but like you see a whole bunch of Wii U games got ported onto the Switch because they're good games.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, people can make arguments about the consoles and even the content on the consoles, the games themselves, but it still doesn't mean that Nintendo didn't care about the consoles when they were making them. It didn't mean that it doesn't mean that they didn't put in effort to try to make a good console. Because I genuinely believe that the company as a whole really cares about the consoles that they come out with, and whether they're handheld or home consoles. Right. And the products that are just any products that they come out with. Like I feel like they're the most. Not, I don't want to say
they do their own thing.
Yeah,
man. Like they're successful at it.
Right.
They're innovative. They're
they care about their characters, their games, their
consoles,
IPs, just their identity so much, and it really shows. So whether some might argue that certain consoles or games are better than others or aren't even good at all, maybe you can never say that they don't care or that they don't try,
right?
Because the care is there and you can see it. In general, they really care about
they do.
Their consoles and the games that they put out, And for me, it really showed with the Switch Lite because I was like, obviously this isn't the main Switch, but it feels like they wanted this console to be just as good as the Switch itself. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put it out.
It's funny because and this segment with this, when the Switch Lite first came out, I was like, oh, that's cool, because they made it a little bit cheaper for people who don't want to shell out the $300 for the Switch, or like maybe who can't really
they just prefer the portable,
right? And that's really cool. I never thought it was a dumb idea the way people thought it was, because like they're just catering to another audience for those DS people, right?
Right, yeah.
Those people who have the 2DS and 3DS, because you knew that they were going to stop supporting that pretty soon, that it was coming up. Which was the 3DS was a great console, but we'll talk about that later. But the thing is that that they're moving into the future.
Yeah.
And it feels so good. Like when I finally held a Switch Lite, I was like, man, I want one now.
Yeah.
And every time you come over,
every time.
I'm like, I just want to touch it. Let me touch it. Let me touch it. Right. So but it's so cool. It's so it feels so light. It's so light. But it feels so cool, and it looks amazing because it's one piece of hardware. Whereas the Switch is. The regular Switch, the Joy-Cons come off, and when you're playing it in handheld mode, unless you have what I have, which is the Switch grip, unless you have that, sometimes they fall off, and it's or you feel them coming off, and you got to slip them back on, after a whole bunch of use. But yeah, man, Switch Lite, I really don't think you can go wrong, unless you really want to have the Switch for party games when people come over, and you really don't need that unless you really have that many times where people are coming over, but we're in a pandemic, so really.
Yeah.
But
the Switch Lite is a good.
The Switch Lite is a good way to go, and it makes, because it's a smaller screen, the graphics look kind of better. Sometimes, I noticed that Animal Crossing, and I think Link's Awakening looked a little bit better too. But yeah, man, the Switch Lite is it's a good way to go.
And it's a good way for me to get back into Nintendo because I had a bit of a gap too. So I had a Wii, but I didn't have a Wii U.
You had a 3DS, right?
Yeah, I had the original 3DS, the old one.
The blue one?
No, the black one. The metallic black one.
Oh, well, that's
I got that one when I was in 8th grade.
You've been playing that since you got and then you got the Switch, right? So you've been as far as Nintendo goes, you still held on to that 3DS.
That's all I had for 7 years or something like that.
Dang.
Aside from the Wii, which came out in 2006. So it's it's a really good way to get into Nintendo if you've never been into Nintendo before, and it's a really good way to get back into Nintendo, especially all things considered. In our current state of the world.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's cool. So the last thing we're going to talk about is our favorite Nintendo console of all time. So my favorite Nintendo console of all time, I don't know whether to split it up into handheld and console.
Home console, yeah.
But I think I'm going to. So let's split it up into two options. You have time to think about it also.
Okay.
So my favorite handheld is the Game Boy Color. My favorite console would have to be the Nintendo 64. Now, what's weird is that I'm gonna start with Nintendo 64 real quick because there's less to say. Even though the games on that, it's really significantly less than any other Nintendo console.
Oh yeah.
They only have maybe about, I don't even remember, but there's really not that many games.
It's nothing compared to GameCube.
Yeah, there's not that many games for it, but I think. For me, growing up in the 90s, the Nintendo 64 was Nintendo. That's when Nintendo was Nintendo for me.
Yeah.
Even though I had the NES first, that Nintendo, the Super Mario 64, that's my Mario.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's the Mario I grew up with, and like as I knew it, as I walked around, remember being a kid.
Yeah.
And like, I would go to the. I had some health issues when I was a kid, so I would go into like the children's hospital. And they would have like 64s, like in like the
really.
Yeah, they would have them, and they would remember when they had them in the McDonald's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude. So it was everywhere at the time.
Play area.
Yeah. So like Mario 64 is like that's Mario to me. So like the Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Mario Kart, right? That's what I grew up with, and that's what, even though I did grow up with the NES, that wasn't my time. That was a little bit before my time, because they were hand-me-downs, remember?
Yeah.
So like it was before my time. But the Nintendo 64 was like my experience growing up as being a kid, a 90s kid, with Nintendo, and I just, that's Nintendo to me, as far as, that's why it's my favorite console. Even though the games on that, however many there are, it's significantly less than any other console, but that's what made it special to me, because they were still, even though there were less, the quantity was still there. And again, Mario 64, Mario being Mario, just paved the way for any 3D game after that.
Yeah.
After that, we got
Sunshine.
but we got Ocarina of Time.
Oh yeah.
So like, and then that, what did that do? That made, that set the precedent for any other like kind of like any Zelda game that's like it. But games like The Witcher, I really don't think we would have The Witcher 3. We wouldn't have stuff like that, open world games kind of like that, if it wasn't for Ocarina of Time and the Nintendo 64. So that's why that's my favorite console. Now, for my Game Boy Color, right?
Yeah.
So the Game Boy Color is my favorite.
Color.
Yeah, it's my favorite handheld Nintendo console. You would think, what the heck? Like, didn't you just talk on and on about the Switch and everything?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. But also, the Game Boy Color was what I grew up with. Being a '90s kid, that was also Nintendo to me. I'm so thankful for my two friends, Matt and Tim, because they had Nintendo Game Boys, right? Game Boy Colors. And then they got their Nintendo, they got like new ones, but then they got, Game Boy Advances. They had a Game Boy Micro, they had a Game Boy Advance SP, like they had like, so they passed it on to me. We're the same age, but like, they're like, I don't use this anymore. Like you can get it. Oh, cool. And then they gave me Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Gold. Those are what I grew up with, man. So I'm really grateful for them, because like I wouldn't know that without them. So every time I play a Game Boy Color game, or I go back to it, like it takes me back to those times with my friends. Like I would go over to their house, and we would play that. We would play together, and they also, they gave me that thing, and I would go everywhere with it.
Yeah.
But man, dude, the Game Boy Color, man, it just holds a special place in my heart. The Pokemon games especially.
Oh yeah, that's definitely like...
Pokemon Blue is my favorite Pokemon game of all time. Yeah. And like, one thing that ticks me off a little bit is that they come out with these emulators, right, for Pokemon, and they even put them on the eShop for like the 2DS and the 3DS, right? Yeah. But the gold, the blue and the red, they're not in color. They're still black and white.
Oh yeah.
So like, but the thing is, like,
I
played it on the Game Boy Color, so it has that bluish hue.
Yeah.
It's not like super colorful, but it still has that bluish hue, and like it's still colorful. Like you can still see the color, kind of in the thing. So like, but anyway, but the Game Boy Color means a lot to me. There was my favorite Zelda game of all time, debuted on the Game Boy Color. We're on the Game Boy, but they came out with it for the Game Boy Color as well. Link's Awakening. And then they brought it out for Switch, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, Link's Awakening, Super Mario as well.
Were the Oracle games on there? Oracle Seasons?
That was Game Boy Advance.
That's Game Boy Advance.
Yeah. So
okay, that's
the Game Boy Color, the big Zelda, the big Zelda ticket for the Game Boy Color was Link's Awakening, which is an incredible game. If you have it on Switch, go get it right now. And if you have a 2DS or a 3DS, right, it's available on the eShop for like $5, I think.
Wow. So, the original.
Yeah, the original. So, it's actually the deluxe version. So it's in color, and it's really nice. See, they have that in color.
Yeah.
They colorized that. They made it with the deluxe version. Why can't they do that with the blue? Anyway, sorry. But the thing is, the Game Boy Color just holds a really special place in my heart. I get all giddy every time I see one. I don't have mine anymore. I'm gonna have to probably go on after this podcast. I'm probably gonna go on eBay and try to look one up. But yeah, man, it's just it reminds me of those times, and
it's a good handheld.
Yeah, Yes.
It was very innovative too.
Mm-hmm.
Just the idea of color, the idea of pigments in a game, which seems like laughable to us now because you're like, every game has color,
Right.
But I mean, back then, because I mean, obviously, I wasn't around when it came out, but I still owned one.
I think you were barely born when
I was born in '99, so
when I started playing Pokemon, I think.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was in '96.
Yeah, Gold came. Well, it came out in '98, I believe, in America.
Oh really?
Yeah. So then in '99, Gold came out.
Yeah.
So like you were born as I was playing
Right.
Gold, so I'm like, oh, a little able. Anyway, but yeah, man. But what about
It was
you?
just super innovative.
Yeah, it was. But for you, so split it. You can split it up if you want to.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
So your favorite Nintendo consoles of all time, handheld and console, or both?
starting with the main series consoles.
Okay.
I would probably. I think I gotta agree with you there on Nintendo
Really?
64. Yeah, I mean, one for obvious like nostalgia purposes, but I think I would make a fair bet to say that Nintendo was their most ambitious, their most experimental, their most just
Really?
let's see what happens, because
They're most experimental? Not with the Wii?
I mean, yeah, with the Wii, with the motion controls and everything too, that was super experimental. But I'd say the venture into 3D.
Oh, I got you.
In
that sense, as far as graphics.
As far as graphics,
there was a whole war with Sega and the 64.
With you mean the Dreamcast?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It was the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, and then I think it was the Dreamcast and 64. Yeah.
Once game companies started going into the realm of 3D.
Oh, you know what? I think I know what you're talking about because like at that time also everything was on CD.
Yeah.
They were still using cartridges.
They were still using cartridges.
Yeah.
Sega and PlayStation, they were all starting to do. So that's what look, and I will say this is something that I was going to point out. A lot of people say that the N64 was kind of like behind the rest of the game in terms of that.
That's the first time they kind of did their own thing.
That was the first time Nintendo kind of did their own thing because Sega was doing CDs.
PlayStation was doing
CDs. Cartridges were out, But Nintendo, like I said, super ambitious, super experimental, with their products and with their games. And I just think Super Mario 64 being one of the first, like, free roaming 3D anything, because they had 3D stuff before, but like it was very minimal and very glitchy and archaic, But Super Mario 64 was one of the first instances of a video game company doing 3D, going into free roaming 3D, and it's succeeding very well.
And the fact that Super Mario 64, they just came out with that. Super Mario 3D All-Stars for the Switch.
Yeah.
The Super Mario Sunshine. 64 and...
Galaxy?
Yeah, Galaxy. Yeah. But the fact that Super Mario 64, people are still paying for that.
Yeah.
Like, literally still paying for that.
It still holds up. And I think that's what
everything but the camera system.
The camera system. Yeah,
don't come at us.
They didn't know what to do back then. They thought it was a good idea to have the.
But people are still paying for that game. Man.
Yeah,
like I get it.
To have the actual. I know it's like, up in those games it's like up is looking up instead of moving forward.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And people were like crazy about it. I'm sure at the time like. A lot of people didn't know how to react to it, but I think the N64 deserves so much praise for just how innovative their 3D was.
Yeah.
Compared to other things that were coming out. Their 3D games are just they
set the precedent.
Yeah, they set the precedent, and they stand.
They set the precedent.
No,
they didn't set the precedent.
And they stand the test of time, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I gotta go in 64 too, in terms of my favorite console.
All right.
But as for
handheld,
now I was thinking Game Boy Advance, but the more I thought about it, the more I have to go with the DS. The DS.
The first
original.
the first DS.
The first DS. The original DS.
Yeah.
And I also was thinking about the 3DS too, but I was like, well, the 3DS really is just a DS. You know, the 3D capabilities. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was.
Oh, the graphics are a little better, but
the graphics are definitely better for sure.
But I get it, man.
Yeah. The original.
That's the best-selling console of all time, I believe.
The best-selling handheld console of all time, the Nintendo DS, had great games, and that was like my. I guess Game Boy
was your
Advance
Nintendo,
was,
yeah.
I guess Game Boy Advance.
How
really
old were you? Was it 2006 when it came out, or
2005, 2006?
2005.
Yeah.
How old were you then?
Like 6, 7. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
when
that's like your.
Yeah.
Like I know you grew. Like I said, the same thing with me and like the NES. Yeah. Where like I did grow up with it, but it wasn't my time.
Right. My time was definitely.
That was
DS,
your time.
Yeah.
With Nintendo. Yeah.
And I mean, just the touchscreen. The dual screen, you know,
man.
The old crazy, the things that they were trying to do with that handheld console, the picto chatting, you could text people, you know, like it was crazy to see that.
You're making me feel bad because I never owned one, and I really wanted one, bro.
I'm talking about like the fat, like silver one, you know, that like the first ones that came out. You had a stylus, you know, you had everything. Like it came, you could play. Game Boy Advance games, and you could play the DS games. That was, I think, the first handheld console that. No, actually, Game Boy Advance was, because you could play Game Boy Color games on the Game Boy.
But it was backwards compatible,
Yeah, and so it's like, just the things that they put into that little device, you know, were just so.
You could play Game Boy Color games on that too, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, on the original DS, you could play three. Man. You could play Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and DS.
3 types of games, man.
Yeah, and they all looked good. Yeah. And those things are durable as heck. Yeah, the kind of
flip got that thing. Nokia skin.
Yeah. I mean, those things were like big and, you know, like
I hear durable. That Metapod's skin is just made up entirely of
3DS
what
material.
The 3DS is made out, or like the DS is made out of.
Because those things, I mean, because I had one when I was a kid. Yeah. And I was a crazy kid, so like I'd throw mine all around.
Were you psycho? Were you like kid?
I was. I'm pretty chill now. You know how I am now. Like, I'm pretty laid back. I feel like this is something that my family says a lot. I feel like they think that all the craziness in my entire life exited my body when I was a kid, because I just was so wild when I was a kid. So now I'm just like chill. But yeah, like I used to, when I would get mad at games, I would like just throw the DS.
I get
forget this, and then I'd like run back to it right later and be like, "Are you okay?" But like,
yes, it was okay because it's durable as heck.
Yeah, it's durable as heck. And it was also one of the first consoles that actually, you know, this is another really cool thing that I don't think gets a lot of thought, but it was the first handheld console that was fully lit up with LED lights. It had a lit up screen. You know, the Game Boy Color didn't have any light to it. You had to buy those attachable little light things and like bend them over.
What about the Game Boy Advance XP?
Game Boy Advance XP was the first to have it, but it had an option of whether you could turn it on. Remember, it had the button.
It was like all the time lit
all
up.
the time.
Yeah, that's right.
It was the first handheld console.
See, like,
to have
I don't know.
Full LED light.
I'm glad that you're here. Yeah. Because like you know a lot about the DS and like the time where I was absent from Nintendo. Like you were there, and I thought that's why I thought like you would be the perfect person to like do this podcast with. Is because like. Where I was absent with Nintendo for like those 10 years, right?
That's right when I was getting into it.
That's what you were doing, you know. So you're right, man.
The DS was just like super revolutionary, and the games on it are great.
Oh yeah, probably one of the greatest game libraries of all time, which is so extensive that you can still buy on the 3DS.
Like it had.
If you have a 3DS, like still a 2DS, you know, go to the eShop, buy yourself a memory card and go to the eShop and just buy a whole bunch of games, because I have a feeling they're gonna shut down that eShop, and when that day happens, I'm gonna be so sad. Like I've looked through that library at least once every day, and I'm like, should I buy it? And I hesitate, but I know that they're gonna get rid of it, and like they have a whole bunch of DS games on there. They have a whole bunch of, you know, what is it? I can't talk. You know, they have a whole bunch of Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games. Like, go. And if you still have a DS too, like if you just have a regular DS, go look at. I don't know what the eShop looks like now, if it's still even up, but like, you know, go to garage sales, go to, you know, places like that, and
You'll find them if you really look for it. You find them, and it doesn't even have to be DS. It could be the DS Lite, the DSi.
Take advantage of what you got, man.
Yeah.
Like before, because these are some great games.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, yeah. So I definitely say DS was the highlight of my experience with handheld consoles, and N64 for home consoles.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's gonna be it for our first show. I really hope you guys liked it. We're gonna be trying to put one of these out every week. So for NintendFriends, I'm Da.
I'm Abel,
and we'll see you guys next week.